All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to have the opportunity to chat briefly with you about a topic that is very near and dear to me, and that is ensuring that all employees in your companies, regardless of where they sit or they don't sit, have equal access to information and communications. So as you can see from this slide, I'm Jeff Corbin. I am Senior Strategic Advisor for Internal Communications Consulting at Staffbase. And for those of you who are not familiar with Staffbase, we are an internal communications platform that provides communications and human resource professionals with a single place to connect with their employees through a branded mobile app, a desktop intranet, through also email, as well as additional channels, including digital signage. And as you can also see from the slide, before joining Staffbase, I was the founder and CEO of another mobile app technology company that was also focused on employee communications. It was called Apprise Mobile. I sold Apprise a couple of years ago to a private equity firm. And before that, I was the CEO of a corporate communications consulting firm in New York City. Before we get into the presentation, I'd like to share a little fun fact about myself. I'm a level 1 CrossFit trainer. And on Sunday mornings, I coach what we refer to as our weekly shred class at Empire State CrossFit. So as travel starts to open up, if you ever happen to find yourself in Mamaroneck, New York, which is about 20 miles north of New York City, please feel free, stop in, join me for a quick 1-hour workout, and just mention IntraNET Reloaded, and it won't cost you anything. So obviously, I'm not here to talk about exercise, but rather, as the title of my presentation suggests, to help you prevent injury when you're getting off the U-Bahn in Berlin, the subway in New York City, and the London Tube. Obviously, I'm just joking. What I'm really here to talk about is minding the gap and really understanding the extent to which your employees may be disenfranchised from receiving information and communications from your companies. So what am I talking about? It's important for you to know that before starting Apprise Mobile, I wasn't a tech guy who just came up with a cool idea for creating a mobile app for employee communications and engagement. Rather, I was fortunate because I had a really smart IT professional who worked with me, who also knew how to code. And together, we realized that with the proliferation of mobile technology, mobile devices, thanks to Apple and obviously Google, and really this was just beginning around 2011, 2012, we realized that there was an opportunity for companies to communicate with their employees in a new and in a much more efficient and effective way, and to actually know if the information that they were creating and that they were sending out was being received and or even read by their employees. I also learned when I secured my first employee app customer, it was a company, you may have heard of them, it's called Cisco. It's a Fortune 100 food distribution company, primarily here in North America, that has more than 50,000 employees. I realized and learned that there was an entire category of employee who had essentially been disenfranchised from information due to the fact that they weren't sitting in offices behind desks with access to computers and corporate intranets, and that many of these 3 billion, I refer to them as deskless workers, some refer to them as non-desk workers, but there's 3 billion of them who didn't have email addresses from the companies that they work for. And as a result of this, the communications, the human resources, and even IT professionals who were responsible for getting information to, engaging with and communicating with these people, they had a really difficult time doing their job to the best of their ability. Mobile technology and employee apps could solve this problem. So this is what I mean by minding the gap. What I'm talking about are the holes that may exist in your employee communication strategy when it comes to making sure that all employees have the same ability to receive content, information, and communications. Unfortunately, and having consulted and worked with hundreds of companies around the world, more often than not, there are groups of employees within your companies that don't have the same access to information as others. And the point of today's discussion is to hopefully sensitize you to the reality of this and also give you a few things to consider and take back to your work to address this important issue. In addition to my work at Staffbase and helping their customers to define their mobile employee app and intranet strategies when it comes to content and the targeting of information to different groups and classifications of employees within their organizations, I'm also a principal in ECA Consulting Group, where ECA stands for Employee Communications Applications, which is a category of technology that has been coined as a new technology market by Gartner. We just heard about Gartner, them, the leading technology analyst firm. And the challenge that exists today and that Gartner hasn't really helped with is the fact that there are now dozens of technology solutions available in the area of employee communications and engagement. And many of them are claiming to solve the entire problem. But in most instances, this is not the case. And when you look at the entire landscape of ECA, you realize that each solution is quite different. And many started with a core aspect to their technologies that was primarily focused on serving employees who had access to desktop computers. But then they had to pivot their models to try to incorporate mobile technology. And now they're claiming to solve everything when in fact, they aren't necessarily able to do so. So it's critical that you understand the broader landscape of ECA and what is core to each solution. And once you have, then determine whether there are gaps that exist, possibly because the technologies that you're using aren't reaching certain groups of employees in your organizations. So in studying the landscape of ECA, which I've spent a lot of time doing recently, I've taken a stab at demonstrating what I'm talking about in this graphic that you can see on the slide. As you can see, the ECA market is made up of solutions that were created specifically to address email usage, intranets, mobile apps for employee communications, as well as chat, messaging, and collaboration. And then there are those solutions that are out there that are not clear in what they actually do, but rather claim to solve the overall employee experience. As I mentioned before, Gartner really hasn't helped clarify the confusion that now exists as more and more companies try to break into the tech opportunity of employee communications and engagement. And in fact, since selling Apprise Mobile, I've had the opportunity in both my writing and my speaking to question Gartner for this, since I don't believe that their market guide, which you can see on this slide, helps communications professionals or their IT counterparts to understand the nature of the ECA market and the many solutions that exist within it. So, for example, they include solutions focused on serving the needs of non-desk workers as well as desk-bound workers who have access to computers and intranets throughout their day. They mention in the same conversation chat and collaboration technologies that really aren't pertinent to non-desk workers who are out in the field. They also throw in project management solutions like ServiceMax, which ServiceMax is a terrific solution specifically for field service, yet it gets grouped together with all the other solutions in the market guide as though they all solve the same problem. In their most recent market guide, they now include some of the Microsoft solutions like Teams, SharePoint, Yammer. But what about companies that don't purchase Microsoft licenses for all employees? And through my work, I could tell you that this constitutes a very significant number of companies and employees in the global workforce. The Gartner's market guide also does not discuss how certain solutions like Staffbase were created to address the problem of communicating with the 3 billion deskless workers through their mobile device, but then evolved its platform to be able to make the same content available to workers sitting in offices by way of corporate intranets, as well as to display the information on digital signage, and also to disseminate the information via email newsletters, therefore making for a holistic employee communication solution that's available across multiple channels. I don't want you to get me wrong. Gartner plays a critical role in analyzing the landscape of technologies across the digital workplace. Rather, my hope is to shed light on the reality of what is going on in employee communications applications so that you're better prepared to ask the right questions, and also maybe to call into question why a particular solution is being considered in your organization versus another solution. And this is especially true and especially important now, given the recent surge of global M&A activity that's been taking place in the ECA market. As you can see from this slide, over the past several months, there have been several notable transactions that have taken place. First, Staffbase, which is headquartered in Chemnitz, Germany, merged with Banana Tag, which is from Western Canada, to now offer internal communications professionals, as I mentioned before, with the ability to reach employees through multiple channels. Banana Tag brought them the email channel. There was Four Winds Interactive acquiring email solution provider Populo, which was based in Ireland. And the strategic purpose of this acquisition is less obvious, since Four Winds is a market leader in digital signage, while Populo, like Banana Tag, is focused on email communication. So it's unclear if this transaction was for the purpose of actually creating a single technology platform for communications professionals by combining both Four Winds and Populo's technologies, or if the purpose was to keep the technology separate and just give their salespeople the ability to sell another type of ECA solution. So basically to broaden their portfolio of technologies that they could sell. Then we have the very recent merger or acquisition of Social Chorus and Dynamic Signal. The reason why I say merger or acquisition is because the press release announcing the deal doesn't specify which it is. So it's unclear which entity will actually survive, although it does appear that Social Chorus will be the one, since their CEO, Social Chorus's CEO, will be leading the new company. The thing that is interesting about this deal, at least to me, is that Social Chorus and Dynamic Signal were the strongest of competitors for years. They both came out of the social advocacy, employee advocacy realm. Their technologies claim to do the same exact thing. So from my perspective, this was more of a private equity venture capital transaction to create a larger entity by combining revenue, rather than a strategic deal to help the internal communications industry. I'm sure that there are those out there that who would disagree with me. This is just my opinion. I'm happy to engage in that conversation. But as I said in a recent article that I wrote for CMS Wire, time will tell us, what the reality is. So when you put these transactions into context within the broader ECA market, it raises the question as to how is a company supposed to determine the right application for employee communications that ensures that all employees have the benefit of information and communications. And this is especially true when it comes to company intranets. As my graphic shows, there are many intranet solutions to choose from. Nevertheless, companies who are Microsoft organizations, because their relationship started with Outlook many years ago, they now rely on, and in many cases are reluctant to move away from Microsoft SharePoint as their intranet backbone. As a result, they're also trying to find ways to put some of the other Office 365 solutions like Teams and Yammer to use, notwithstanding the fact that these solutions might not help certain employee constituents in their organization, especially the deskless worker. Question whether this is necessarily the right decision, or is simply a function of the individuals who are responsible for making intranet decisions being conservative and not wanting to embrace change. So to prove this point, Staffbase recently conducted research in partnership with the School of Communication and Management in Berlin, where our team ran a survey with nearly 200 intranet managers, either working on the content or on the technical side. A couple of things that we learned that I want to share with you today. First, with respect to how the intranet managers view the importance of communications technologies focused on non-desk employees, 2 out of 5, or 40%, indicated that their company only provides a desktop intranet to their employees, therefore leaving non-desk workers feeling disconnected from their businesses. And then of this 40%, almost half conceded the fact that given their current intranet situation, they aren't able to reach their non-desk employees. So therefore, it's not surprising that 2/3 of the intranet managers said that their company intranets do not reach all employees. So in my opinion, this goes to show the reluctance to embrace change, especially when the people responsible for a company's intranet know that it isn't accessible by a large portion of the workforce, and therefore is not 100% effective in its ultimate purpose of getting information and communications to all employees. We also asked the intranet managers how satisfied they were with their current intranet. And since this was an anonymous survey, the responses were quite candid, with more than half indicating dissatisfaction and nearly a quarter extreme dissatisfaction. With respect to how employees feel about their current intranet situation, while I don't have a slide for this, our survey did reveal that 20% of employees are dissatisfied with their current intranet solution, while 40% don't agree that their current intranet helps simplify their workload. And this is a statistic that I feel all professionals, whether in IT, in communications, or any other business unit for that matter, should be aware of and maybe a bit concerned. So it's with this in mind that companies like Staffbase are working real hard to further the cause of ensuring that no employees are uncommunicated with by providing companies with a central access point to deliver content to mobile, to the desktop intranet, digital signage, email, and other channels, and to do so in a way that is easy for the non-tech savvy communications professional, that doesn't require the replacing of legacy systems, that can sit side by side the Microsoft ECAs, and at the same time provides employees with an excellent end user experience, as well as a convenient way, depending upon where they sit or how they prefer to get their important information, and then also for their companies to be able to better engage with them. So I know that I've spent the better part of this presentation discussing the problems that companies face when it comes to communicating with their employees. Now I'd like to help you solve this problem and really address what I mean by minding the gap when it comes to the holes that may exist in your company's internal communications and technology strategies. So to do this, I've created a 3-step diagnostic process for determining if you have any gaps in your employee communications application technology infrastructure. And while it certainly can be used by IT professionals, I really designed this for the less tech savvy communications professional. So the 3 steps are as follows. First, map out and really understand the structure of your company's organization and the demographics of your workforce. And I'll show you what I mean about this in a moment. The next step is a little easier, which is to identify the employee communication solutions that you're presently using. And last, layer your ECA tech stack over your organizational structure and workforce demographics to make sure that all employees are being reached. So let me share with you a case study that I think will demonstrate for you what I mean. One of the more complicated organizations that I've worked with over the years is Caesars Entertainment. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Caesars. They own and operate hotels and casinos all around the world. When I was working with Caesars, it was before they completed a merger with Eldorado Resorts and became the largest casino organization in the world. But before that, they were already very, very large. They had 50 different properties located around the world. They were broken down by regions. And then within each region, they had different brands. Some of them you may have been to, you may be familiar with. So the famous Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the legendary Flamingo Hotel, as well as numerous Harrah's hotels and casinos and Planet Hollywoods. So obviously, for those internal communications professionals who were responsible at Caesars for communicating from headquarters in Las Vegas to each location, for them to be successful in their work and to ensure that they were able to reach the tens of thousands of employees who work for Caesars, it was first important that they had a solid handle on the organizational structure of your company. I can't begin to tell you the number of meetings that I've sat in where I'm brought in as a consultant. And I've sat in these meetings with members of the C-suite, with the communications, human resources, IT teams, and I'll ask them to draw out an organizational diagram of their company. It's amazing. They all will kind of just look at themselves, stare at each other, and they don't know where to begin. And then to make things more challenging, once I've asked them to show me or explain to me their organizational structure, then I ask them to explain to me the different types of employees that exist in their workforce. And there are going to be those who work in office settings with access to computers and a company's intranet. But then there are the 3 billion deskless workers who don't have access, or at least easy access, to computers and your intranet. So once you know your organizational structure and your workforce demographics, then it's time to look at which employee communications applications your organization is using and determine who they're reaching. Many of us take for granted the fact that everyone has email. However, this is not necessarily the case. And in fact, most of the 3 billion deskless workers are not provided with corporate email addresses. So therefore, to get information to these folks, you need to look to other ECAs to ensure that you're able to get information to and to reach them. And the same holds true for corporate intranets. Yes, employees might be able to access a company's intranet at home, or in the case of casinos and hotels in back of house areas, or in manufacturing facilities, hospital systems, employee break rooms, there might be kiosks to access the intranet. But question whether this is the most convenient way for these folks to obtain the information that's important to them, like their schedules, pay stubs, personal time off. And after working 8-hour shifts or longer, do they really want to have to go home and sit in front of a computer to get this information rather than spending time with their families? Do they even have Wi-Fi or decent internet service to be able to access your intranet from home? One thing that has fundamentally changed over the past several years is the fact that pretty much everyone now has a mobile device, whether it be company provided or personal. So obviously, this is where the opportunity exists to close the gaps that might exist in your employee communications technology situation. The problem is that most companies don't provide devices to every employee, and therefore need to rely on bring your own device, BYOD, as well as employees being willing to use their personal devices for work-related purposes, which we all know can be tricky for various reasons. So with all this being said, the real question that every employee communications and engagement professional, or any professional whose responsibility includes getting information to employees, the question you should be asking yourselves is, am I able to reach every employee in my organization? And if you can confidently say yes to this, then you're in a good place and you can carry on. But if you can't, then given what's going on in the ECA market, an opportunity exists for you to do so. It's just a function of first drawing out what your organization and workforce looks like, layering over this your current ECA technology stack to determine whether each solution currently being used is reaching each group of employees. And then to the extent that you learn that there are certain groups of employees who are not being reached, be knowledgeable enough about the ECA technology market to identify the solution or solutions that will allow you to get information to communicate and successfully engage with all of your employees. Thank you very much. That's my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions with the few minutes that I have remaining. I'm also happy to share with you this presentation. You have my email, my LinkedIn profile on the slide. Gamze, I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That was fantastic. Well, considering the time, I would like to ask one question to you and invite our attendees that they might maybe approach to you via our event platform or the contact information you share. So the question is, since our company does not provide everyone with a mobile device, how can I get employees to download an employee app to their personal device? Maybe you can answer these questions from the audience.
Yeah, and that's a question that we get all the time at a company at Staffbase. The answer is that you're not going to be able to get every employee to download an employee app to a device, but the way you get them to download it is to demonstrate to them the value of what it brings to them by way of content and the information that is being made available through it. There's going to be information that is nice to know, but then there's information that's need to know. And to the extent that you can make that need to know information available to them, let them know that the purpose behind this solution is to make it easier for them to get information, also more convenient for them. Over a period of time, people will realize that, wow, this is really well intended. It's a solution that's out there to help me in my life and in my work, and therefore I should download it to my personal mobile device.